Okay. All right, so to begin with, let's see. I read this first, right? The rules? Or do you want me to call the meeting to order?
Call the meeting to order.
All right. Okay. Okay, so we are going to begin the meeting for October 8th. Thank you. 2020 at 6 p.m.
And then Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes, yes. Fred, would you like to lead us?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with justice and liberty for all. Or liberty and justice, I always get that messed up.
As soon as you get mixed up, I'll get mixed up.
Okay. Now, I'll read our guidelines when attending the meeting telephonically. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, many meetings are being conducted telephonically. This is a new concept for many people, and we want to make sure that the meetings are running as smoothly and efficiently as possible. In an effort to achieve these goals, the clerk has created meeting guidelines for attending meetings telephonically. The chair will read these guidelines at the beginning of each meeting, and we would appreciate everyone's cooperation and assistance in implementing these meeting guidelines. The chair will call on each commissioner individually to provide their input on each agenda item. Please wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking. Always identify yourself when you are speaking. Everyone should mute their phone when they are not speaking. Wait for one person to finish before speaking. Everyone gets a say on each agenda topic, but the chair will call each person individually by name to have their turn to speak. If you do not have a response, then say no comment. Be respectful of everyone's time and allow them the opportunity to answer any questions they have been asked without interruptions. Madam Clerk, could you make the roll?
Furlong. Walkers.
Here.
Ward is excused. Kurtz. Kurtz. I know he said he was going to be telephonic. He might not be on yet. Benoit.
Here.
Lebrecht.
Here.
Okay. Furlong one more time. Okay. Kurtz. Okay. And Chair Cease.
Here.
You have a quorum, Chair.
Thank you. Before we begin, we have lost a wonderful member in our community and the husband of our vice chair. Eric Ward passed away last Thursday, and I would like to ask for a moment of silence. All right. Do we have any citizen comments?
We do not.
Okay. All right, so approval of the agenda and the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve it and a second? Please.
Yes, sir. I move to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Kurtz. A second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilkers. I found nothing, to change or add. The minutes were great. Does anybody else have anything they want to change or add? Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll or the vote?
And one thing I will mention is if there's not any objection from the commission on the minutes, I did forget to put in parentheses who was attending telephonically for the last two. So I would like to make that correction when you have them, when I have you sign them.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. So approval of the agenda and consent agenda. LeBrecht,
Agree, yes.
Furlong is here, Kurtz.
Yes.
Furlong's
Oh,
here.
Furlong's here, okay. Kurtz,
Yes.
Walkers,
Yes.
Benoit,
Yes.
Chair Cease.
Yes.
So the agenda and consent agenda have been approved. On the consent agenda is the approval of the September 10th, 2020 regular meeting minutes and the approval of the September 21st, 2020 special meeting minutes.
Okay. So, oop. We are now at the point where we deal with standing reports, right? Yeah, okay. All right, so moving on to our special orders, presentations, and reports. We had no proclamations or awards. City administration report, we have both Ms. Wild and we have Ms. Kingsland, but they're both going to speak respectively at other points in the meeting. My report, the chair report, I would like to extend a special thank you to Commissioners Benoit and Lebrecq. They put in a lot of extra time between last month and this month, and we did our job as the Historic Preservation Commission, and I'm very proud of that. And I would like to note that there was one person in particular who was very rude and unprofessional to both of my commissioners. And I think that's a sad state of affairs. But Commissioner Benoit and Commissioner Lebrecq were very professional and said nothing about it. So I thank them for that. The Certified Local Government Grant, Commissioner Lebrecq will be covering that later in the meeting. Ms. Benoit, or Commissioner Benoit, would you like to give us a quick update on the Historic Overlay District?
Sure. As I mentioned at our last meeting, I completed edits to the draft Downtown Historic District Design Standards and Guidelines. It's an addendum to the 2017 Historic Preservation Plan to implement and move forward. So this document was started by Mural and is based on a similar document developed in for their historic district. So after doing all the edits, I delivered it to Sue for review. And after her review, Sue and I plan to work to get together with planning and zoning and get their input. And just so you know a little more detail about the document, it contains some of the following things. Some chapters on basic principles of historic preservation, history and character of downtown Seward, and then there are design guides, there are chapters for design guidelines for rehabilitation of historic properties, for historic building materials, for historic building elements, historic alterations and additions, guidelines for new construction, guidelines for site design and the public streetscape, guidelines for parking facilities, guidelines for signs, and also for off-season display windows. So this is a working document, so we can add more subjects, as needed, meet the needs for stewards, and, remove things that aren't, needed as well. So that's kind of where we're at, and obviously, it's going to take Sue a little time to be able to finish, her part of the review before we can kind of get together with planning and zoning to move on to the next step. But we're making lots of progress, and that's where it stands right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Benoit. Deputy Clerk Stollard, is that phone turned down so we don't hear it as well, or is it the people on the phone themselves?
It did sound quiet though. Yeah, it's up pretty high.
Okay. All right,
I put it up one more notch to see what helps me.
okay.
I can just try to speak
Oh,
through the phone. and-
that's much better. Yeah, that's much better, thank you. Okay. The Historic Preservation Facebook page. On page 4, we'll go there. Commissioner Benoit will take this as well.
Okay. So there's a report attached in our packet, and as I mentioned in the report, we're regularly posting once a week. We are building our audience. We're getting engagements on our posts. So, for example, last month we reached over 100 people and had 74 engagements. So most of the people that see the materials we're posting are engaging, which is good. I started a series on properties that are on the National Register of Historic Places, which seems to be very popular and which I will continue to do. One of the reasons for this is that I hope that most of these properties will also be on the historic walking tours that we got the CLG grant for. The posts help the community to learn our history and appreciate how many truly exceptional historic properties we have. These small histories put together for Facebook, I think, can also help contribute to what we also need to develop for the walking tours. In addition, posts such as the one on the Golden Park, for example, which is another property in the National Register, get citizens involved, enhances collaboration between our commission and the city and local organizations such as Rotary. And it shows Seward residents that things are happening in town to protect our history in the community. Also, this morning I was thinking about it, I had an idea for another series, which I thought would be great, where we could do before and after pictures for people that have restored historic properties. So, for example, the Cable House came to mind. I'm sure Tommy has some great before pictures and after pictures. And I think this would be really successful because just from my own experience as a designer, I know that before and after pictures are the kind of things that people really love to see. So I think by doing something like that, it may inspire people to, consider working on restored historic properties and give them ideas of the kind of things that they can do. So in the summer, I see what we're doing on Facebook at tying in really well together with our walking tour grant. Also getting people interested in supporting historic preservation, which will also tie in with getting support for our standards and guidelines, which we're developing, and promoting collaborative work that we're doing with the community on preservation, such as at Golden Park, And also it gives us the opportunity to invite people to get involved with the commission and attend our meetings. So that's how I see what's happening right now, what's been going on, and I wanted to check in to see if there was any ideas from commissioners or upcoming posts or events that might be coming up that I am not aware of.
I personally, I don't know how the commission feels, but I think it'd be a good idea to put a note up inviting the public to be a part of choosing the properties that we want to attach historical significance to, that they would like to see on a walking tour, or have a plaque explaining the date of the property, etc.
Great idea.
Anybody else?
This is Commissioner LeBrecq. I would propose that to build some steam behind some of these things, that we look at doing some type of very small, no-cost events at Brown and Hawkins, our place, any of the other historical areas around town, just to kind of start getting a little bit of buzz. But I have to publicly say that the Holman Park thing got me excited, because one of the biggest things I've had concerns you'll hear about later, or not concerns, but one of the most important things about this CLG grant is, where do we get volunteers? It's clear that there's a groundswell of people who are willing to step up if we put it in front of them. So anything that we can do to, Marianne, to get public, kind of an ongoing public discussion via the Facebook pages, I find to be fabulous, is wonderful. Because I know that's a big thing in Seward. If you really think about it, you look at, like, say, a Craigslist versus a Facebook. Facebook is big in Seward.
Yes, it is.
So I appreciate very much what you're doing. It's getting some notice. I try to like as much as I can. I definitely think every commissioner should put that out to their friends to spend some time on that webpage. Great. Facebook page, rather.
Thank you. One addendum to that, the Rotary were our volunteers, and they were there courtesy of Commissioner Benoit. And of course, we appreciate that very much, but we would like to expand beyond them in getting the public excited enough to volunteer to help us carry out these goals. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to discuss, if no commissioner has anything further that they would like to add, is Community Development Head, Ms. Wild, is going to give us a presentation on the Walkable Mural Crosswalks.
So I know that the commission had a meeting on the 21st to discuss walkable murals. I just want to give a little history background of why this was brought forward to you guys and why we are where we are with this project. So a while back, walkable murals were brought forward to the the city council. At which time City Council requested that Planning and Zoning come up with an application and a process to incorporate walkable murals.
Excuse me for interrupting. Commissioners, can you please go to page 14? That is the portion Ms. Wild has provided for us, so we can follow along. Go ahead, Ms. Wild.
So the walkable mural process, we've come up with a draft, Planning and Zoning has come up with a draft application. I've listened to your guys' meeting from the 21st, just to fix some misconceptions. At no point in this process is it going to be requested that historic preservation or any city organization purchase a space to do a walkable mural. This project is brought forward by other organizations within the city that were interested in doing walkable murals. The reason I suggested at the planning and zoning work session was to bring it to HP is because if you look at the map that is included in the packet on page 19, there, I specifically left out the historic, downtown historic areas. I suggested to the Planning and Zoning Commission that we get some input from the historic preservation on how they would like to see murals or walkable crosswalk or murals in the downtown district. And the reason I did that was there's a lot of other cities in the United States that have done walkable murals in historic districts and making guidelines for them. You know, so instead of having, you know, bright big colors, figuring out a way to incorporate the history of the downtown. One of the ideas in murals that I have seen is in the piano keys. The city had a muralist paint the houses that were historic. So you'd have your piano keys and then every little house, in between every one was a different house with their little address written on it, you know, just as a memorable area. Like if your guys are doing a walkable history tour, it'd be really great to be like, here's a crosswalk that, you know, somebody painted historic houses on. And I didn't want to just pick places in downtown. I wanted to have your guys' input on them. But the application itself, it will be, when they're presented, it will be heard in front of planning and zoning. And, you know, we have the guidelines that we've suggested. And I just would like to see historic preservation maybe say, you know, maybe look into what you would like to see in the downtown. You know, do you want it to, you know, we've had some native corporations be like, it'd be really great if we could paint a, you know, sort of a totem pole. And I love that idea. You know, we've had somebody suggest painting some of them that look like railroad tracks because of the railroad. And so it's just to give you guys an idea, to have you give some input on specifics. Like if you guys pick 3 areas in the downtown district that you think would work for a walkable mural, and then give me some guidelines that you would like to see adhered to, then we can incorporate them into the application where it's like, okay, if you pick one of these 3 areas that are downtown, you must follow these guidelines. You can't just pick a picture and do it.
Commissioner LeBrecq?
I just want to say, not speaking for or against on behalf of the commission, a thank you to Ms. Wild. I was at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, sitting just about where you are, when the consideration was to be discussed among the Planning and Zoning Commissioners as to the next steps forward, and you actually made the suggestion that our commission be allowed to have some input, which was received and accepted, and I appreciate that very much. It is definitely one of our stated goals is to help with preservation, and I think that we're really doing that, and we're working in conjunction with and hand in hand with P&Z, and so I appreciate that you put that out there and allowed us to be part of the discussion. I just wanted to publicly say that before we get into any further. Thank you.
Here. At this point, Ms. Wild, I would like to see the crosswalks on Adams to Washington on 4th be protected for historic use, if we're even going to do that. At the last meeting, it was my understanding that we were only going to do crosswalks that had stop signs, with the exception of one stop sign that has been decided must be added. So there's no stopping on either of those points.
And to clarify that, at the meeting, the planning and zoning meeting, we discussed just doing the solid white lines. But in other talking with the Public Works Department, they had mentioned that they would be okay with the piano keys as long as they painted within those white lines also. So as long as
Okay.
So then you have that interaction where, you know, you could paint in those little squares, like I was saying, like
Right.
houses or something, but as long as you're not going over into the safety standards of those white piano keys.
Thank you
So,
for,
yeah, and that will be added as a change, you know, as the development requirements. It will be put that you must meet these standards, maybe be a half an inch inside of that, so it would have a black mark around it and then have the white on the
all right.
sides.
So what would our commission need to do in order to preserve both of those crosswalks for historic use only?
Well, I would, you know, and the way I look at it is, you know, adding just sort of that little caveat, a little asterisk that's like, if you pick one of these areas for a crosswalk, you know, then it would need to be heard in front of historic preservation and planning and zoning. You know, because right now, I mean, the way I look at it is somebody's really wanting to do the downtown district, then they will do the steps. You know, it won't be an over the night thing, just, oh, yes, we're gonna put in our application. We can implement that process where it's heard in front of you guys, this is their plan. I could present it just as I do everything else in planning and zoning. You know, it'd be an application, you guys would get to see the concept drawings, the designs, and, you know, there's a lot of working moments behind the scenes.
But it's a $500 application fee.
It is a $500 application fee with a
Non-refundable.
$5,000, correct. $500 application fee with a $5,000, did we change it? I might have changed it.
$1,500?
$1,500, sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
At first we had talked about a $5,000, but, and so the application fee is $500, non-refundable. That's the time and effort that goes into the whole process.
Absolutely.
And then the $1,500 would be for 3 years, and they would have to sign a contract basically stating that they would maintain it. If they fail to maintain it, then that $1,500 deposit would be taken to put it back into its original status state.
Can we go back to the beginning? I believe you said that you wanted to clarify something from our last meeting, and that was that the city is not going to charge any of the city commissions to do this?
So the
Did I hear that right?
Well, it was brought up at your guys' 21st meeting, you know, in your guys' discussions, it's like, we don't really have a budget to do that. And it's not, that idea is not where we're going with this. We're not asking, you know, for you to use a very small budget that you have to purchase a crosswalk. But if like the Alaska Historic Preservation or somebody wanted to come in and enter into something like that, yes, of course we would. But it's just, it's not cohesive to use your budget that you have as a commission to do a project in the city on a crosswalk. This is for commercial or other organizations, not a city organization purchasing it.
Commissioner LeBrecq?
May I clarify, though, in areas that would be considered in the historical district for a crosswalk, could those spots be reserved for a certain time in the event that our commission, for example, would want to seek a grant, say a CLT
Yes.
type of grant, that
Absolutely.
would allow us to paint a house, a railroad track, or whatever that
Absolutely,
might look
yes.
like? Could that place, could the historical areas be reserved for historical commission? That's the first question. The second thing, I think we'd have some discussion, is that these are the proposed first areas, but they don't propose to be all the areas. In other words, other crosswalks could be added if this is approved, and would those take further legislation, or would it be limited to what's proposed on this? And the third part of that discussion is, what enforcement ability, or any, are we simply being asked, because I think what I heard at the PNC meeting was you say that you wanted input on us on the process and the application, but what enforcement would we have, if any, to say whether we did or did not agree with a crosswalk being put in anywhere in town?
So.
Because we're just being seen as a consultant, correct? We don't have any enforcement ability.
Correct. And so I'll just start at the very beginning of your questions. Your first one, well, maybe I'm not even answering your first one, but I sort of look at this process as like a mobile vendor. You know, when we started the mobile vendor process through the city, it came through planning and zoning, and they picked 5 areas. You know, now we have, I think, 8 areas. But those first 5, it's to see if the project's gonna work. If it's, you know, we can put in and designate these areas without downtown for right now, and start out with just doing those first, the areas on Port, the Harbor, Blaine, and Jefferson as the start of this project. And then maybe, you know, in a year, 2 years, if it takes that long for somebody to bite on it or want it, you know, then we could reassign and add extra. So, and that's where I wanted to bring you guys into the play. Like right now, we don't have to include any of the downtown areas in this draft, because we can present it to council and say, you know, we're going to start it out real slow. We're going to do these areas that we know have a lot of traffic, you know, that have a lot of tourist traffic. You know, we always talk about Port Avenue, right? Port Avenue. How do we get the people from the cruise ship terminal across the street, down the right side of the road, and then into the downtown district? Maybe we say you can have, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different locations to help lead people into the downtown district. And then, you know, if it works and it's a great process and a great doable, then we could come back and you guys could say, okay, from Adams to Washington, we don't want them here, but maybe we want them, you know. I keep thinking about the marathon race, right? You know, the marathon start and the marathon end. You know, what's to say that we don't, you know, have it look like a state flag? What's to say that we don't have the start look like our city flag, you know, that has marathon on it? Those are options that could happen. And that's what I want you guys to say, wait a minute, that's not historic enough for us. We want to sort of keep with this feel of, you know, maybe we want it to look like a boardwalk. Those kind of things.
I want to clarify one really important point. We do not actually have an ability tonight, whether we agree, disagree, or anything else, to impact the decision of whether Walkable Murals goes forward or not.
No.
Okay? So what we're talking about now is we're saying, from our historic perspective, this is what would be important to us. If the murals are going to happen, it would be important to us that we protect XYZ area, or that we look at the application and we say, as a commission, which many commissions are going to get to impact, and city council is going to get to, anyone's going to get to comment.
Right.
We have the ability to put our thoughts on it and our influence on it, but we actually do not have a position to take one way or another, whether we agree that they do or they don't go. It's P&Z's and city council's purvey.
Correct, and that's why, I mean, it's planning and zoning's, you know, because it was given from community, or from the council to planning and zoning, you know, and that's why I fought so hard even at the last meeting, like, let's include historic pres, because maybe historic pres doesn't want anything in the historic district right now. And that's why I didn't even try to put little circles on a map. I was trying to keep that area so we could work forward to doing the things that you're talking about. And as you were saying in your question, when it comes to could we reserve them, you know, could we put a caveat that's like, hey, the city has the ability, and historic preservation has the ability to get a CLG grant, and they want to use it to purchase 3 of these downtown crosswalks to do XYZ with. Yes, that is something that we could put into the policy that, okay, you know, and that's why we're really, I mean, I think it's a great idea to have your guys' input, And I think it's a great idea if somebody were to bring forward an application, you know, we implement this, it gets approved, and then next year somebody comes in and puts in an application and wants one down in downtown district, then I would immediately say, let's present it to historic preservation and to planning and zoning. And it may be something that we present during a work session to you guys. You know, when we have one of our joint work sessions, maybe it works in and we're like, hey, by the way, we have this application. And do you guys have any problems with this? Or do you see something that, you know, maybe it doesn't fit the criteria or things that you want?
So Commissioner LeBrecq asked you a question earlier, and I seem to have understood that you would hold off allowing anybody to do a mural in those crosswalks between Adams and Washington for us, right?
She
Yes.
can make that recommendation.
I can make that recommendation and we can see if the
So-
planning and zoning commission's like, yes, I agree, we should let them have the, you know,
So is
should
that
hold off
within-
on it.
Excuse me,
Commissioner
this
Kurtz?
is Commissioner Kurtz. Is that within the downtown historic district?
Yes,
So what's the, I was under the impression that the entire downtown historic district was going to be excluded from the area that these murals could happen if they happen.
Nope.
I made the recommendation that we not have them on the map until we spoke to you guys to see what your thoughts and feelings were.
Well, I have some practical concerns with these things that require perpetual maintenance. And if you start allowing boutique crosswalks in the downtown historic area, whether or not they're historic in nature, it just opens the door. So there's the cost and there's the precedent that concern me. I'd rather just see the entire downtown historic area excluded from the area that these things are allowed in if they come to be.
I would agree. Commissioner LeBrecq?
Here's what I would stipulate. Just like was brought up at our previous council meeting, we are in the process of creating a historic overlay. There's several pieces that are happening right now that are all going to come to fruition and are taking time. There's the 2017 HP preservation plan. There's the CLG grant, which is now happening. It's an actuality. Thank you to City Council and thank you to Ms. Kingstad and thank you to Ms. Kingsley, I'm sorry. And thank you very much for Deputy Kirk Sallard and all the help that we've gotten from the city for getting that moved. So we've got a historic preservation plan, which we need to take seriously. We also have like I said, the signage project, and we have several bits and pieces that are in the process of moving forward and need to be completed. So I would say that it would be best to focus those efforts away from the historic district until that time where we can finish the historic overlay, address the 2017 plan, get all the signage put in, which by the way does have a date on it. It's by June 2021. We'll have that work done. We'll have the walking tour. We'll have those things done. And at that point in time, we can figure out how and if and when this makes sense to bring that in. So from my personal point at this point, while I wait to hear the rest of your presentation, I'm not stating I'm for or against or anything else or getting into that. I'm just saying allow us to finish what we started, because that's something that's a long ongoing project that's been going on since for a long time that we now have steam on and we have an opportunity to finish. So
And that is
I don't
why
want
I
to
did
divert
not
from that.
include the historic district into the mapping.
I'd appreciate it if you could guard that and make that stick,
Well,
please.
all I can do is I can tell you that I'm putting together, even after tonight's meeting, putting together a resolution to accept this application that will be reviewed by planning and zoning at our November 3rd meeting and then put forward to administration and to council. But that is the whole reason that I'm here this evening is to, I know what direction you guys are wanting to go. At least I feel that I know that, and I did not want to just bring something forward and be like, nope, we're just going to do it. So that's why I presented it to you guys, because that's why I want to just put it out there that I think that, you know, I've said from the very beginning, start slow, start small. You know, let's see if it works in a couple areas, and if it doesn't, you know, then it's only a couple areas and it's not everywhere. And that's why, you know, just like mobile vendors, start it small, come up with a map that shows the areas that we're gonna approve them to be located. And if that's not in the downtown district, I'm okay with that.
Okay, I have one concern. I was told that there is an application, and it's for the crosswalk on 4th at Washington.
There is no application, no application.
Okay, good.
This application is a draft and it has not been approved and
Okay.
nobody has filled anything out.
Okay.
Trustee, make
Commissioner LeBrecq.
a recommendation to yourself as chair, and that is that as we come up with some kind of solution tonight, that we state that we are somehow in favor of historic preservation and so on, as opposed to using any wording about being opposed to, because sometimes it's characterized that we're not working in conjunction with P&Z or whomever it might be, and I actually do not agree with that. So I would like to say
Thank you.
that whatever our statement is, however you choose to craft it, that it is, we are in favor of historic preservation, we're in favor of working with P&Z, et cetera, however you propose that. I don't believe that we are against, we're not oppositionists to development or to anything else, we're just into preservation.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Furlong. I wonder if we need a formal document. Do we need to create a formal document stating that we would like to have the downtown historical district preserved for possible historical use in the future?
I will include it in our resolution and our agenda statement, the meeting tonight, you know, by the wishes of you, if you guys want to vote on that, or if you want to, you know.
Would you like us to actually do a resolution that would be sent to your commission?
You don't have to do a resolution, even if you guys just sent a letter, then I could put it in with support that, you know, we have worked together, you know, this is the idea, yes, we're for them at some point, but right now just preserve what we have and do the other locations.
All right?
Yep.
All right. Commissioner Benoit?
Yes, I have several comments. First, I believe that the crosswalk location on the map is on Jefferson and 4th, actually within the historic downtown district. I'm not sure about that other one on Blaine, but I believe 4th and Jefferson is. The second comment is, for the last meeting, I looked through our document that we're developing, which is, you know, the standards and guidelines, to see if there was anything already in there related to walkable mural. There's nothing in the document now. There was some information about doing things like decorative sidewalks and things like that, which basically was against doing stuff like that in the historic district. I did start doing a bunch of research to see, you know, what people have done as far as walkable murals in other cities and towns, etc. And found a few things. Pretty much everything I found was against doing anything like that in the historic district. But, you know, as an artist, personally, I think it sounds like a great idea. But as far as historic preservation commissioner, I feel like we need to really look into this. And my suggestion is that this is a great opportunity to call and talk to the state historic preservation office and just ask them to see what they think about doing something like this, what's been done in other historic districts in Alaska, and try to get some guidance. Because I started going down this road of researching all these other places, and I thought, instead of spending a ton of time on this, why don't we just call them? That's what they're there for, to help guide us in things like this. And I think if we did do that, we would be in a much better position to be able to comment or contribute to ideas to this.
And just know that, I mean, even us putting something forward to council doesn't mean that council doesn't say, yes, we're gonna allow them in this spot and this spot. They're allowed to change any of the requirements or requests that we put forward.
Commissioner Kurtz?
Yes?
Do you have any other comments or questions?
No.
Commissioner Furlong?
Now,
Commissioner Wolkers?
No.
Commissioner LeBrecq?
One question for clarification, please. Ms. Wild, I think you mentioned at the P&Z meeting that you were actually looking for us to basically be in agreement with or provide input into the actual application. Are you still requesting that from us now, and is that something we need to do tonight?
No, I'm just asking for clarification on the areas that you would require or request us not to put walkable murals. And, you know, I've sort of written down Adams through Washington. You know, Jefferson was added to the map based off of the work sessions, the previous work sessions, as well as some council comments that were made the night of the original meeting discussing how this application process would come about.
Thank you for the clarification. So again, just to be very clear that I'm not necessarily for or against the initiative. I just simply want to state that we're for historic preservation. Therefore, we are asking, or I'm asking, that we not initially include any of the historical district in the consideration for the walkable murals. That does not mean that I'm against walkable murals. It simply means that I'm for historic preservation.
And are you guys, you know, Ms. Benoit had stated Jefferson is in the historic district, but again, that's why Jefferson is added, because of previous input from council meetings. If you guys are wanting us to remove that spot, or just have it be the Adams to Washington.
Well, okay, this is Chair Cease. So you could move the Jefferson down to, I think it's Monroe. There's a sign there, you know, one of the brown and white signs that you know, state that this is our historic route. So we'll be tying into all that anyway. So that's one consideration. Another one, Ms. Wild, I don't know if you're aware, but Adams and Belaine on the right-hand side, that's the Standard Oil house. Mm-hmm. And then on the left, you know, that's also one of the originals. So, you know, I mean, I know we have them dotted all over town and we can't like hog everything, but
Again, the two circles that are on your map of Adams and Jefferson are two locations that were brought up in previous discussions, and that is why I put them on there. But if you guys are making the recommendation not to have any from Monroe down, I can put that in our resolution.
this is Commissioner Benoit. If you look at our historic, downtown historic district boundaries, I think for sure that, you know, it seems like Jefferson is the boundary of that. So I think that one in Jefferson and Fort is in the historic district. I'm not sure about the one that's on Adams. Seems like there's a lot of historic properties down there, so if my preference would be to drop both of those things out of the mix for now, until we can get some further guidance.
And as I can say, I can drop them out. I'm not guaranteeing that they're gonna stay out.
Commissioner Benoit, if you're wanting Jefferson drop, do you have a replacement suggestion?
I don't have a suggestion, but I just think that any place outside the historic district would be, you know, okay with me.
Ms. Wild, does that give you anything to work with?
It doesn't, and the reason, I mean, there's just this part of me that I understand that portion, and I just see some major pushback. I see it being a concern at the council level of them being like, you defeated our purpose of even wanting these. Because there are people that, and so that's why I was like, we can just keep the downtown district, where the shops are and everything at this time off the map. Sort of give a bend where you're like, okay, we're okay with Jefferson and we might be okay with this Spillane, but I see that, I have no problem taking your remarks, putting them forward to planning and zoning, and then putting from planning and zoning into council. There's a part of me that wants to say you want to have a little give and a little take, and I don't know that just taking them all out and saying, nope, absolutely not downtown, you're going to have.
Right. So, you did say though that you were going to push to protect 4th and Washington. Okay.
Yes, I did.
Commissioner Breck?
I think that the idea of a workable compromise should be something that's in discussion. If we can have compromise, it's a start. We haven't had our first meeting with P&Z. We're going to start working much closer, and I think we're making a lot of headway.
November 3rd.
I don't know. I think that it seems that there's enough steam behind this where at some point in time it's going to come to fruition. So we might consider protecting those areas which we wish to from a downtown district, as you mentioned. Whatever things may not conflict particularly with where most of our walking tour will be, and that's kind of where our concern, or at least my concern. I'd speak for myself. I want to get the signage in. I want to make sure that we're preserving downtown. I want to make sure that we get those things done first, and that the historic overlay, which really focuses on the most historic parts, most notable parts of Seward, are protected, and we complete that project before we sideline into anything else. So if we can compromise, that would be my preference. I have a better chance probably with compromise than not all, but that is only my own, and I'm totally fine
It's
with
how I feel too.
I'm totally fine with other opinions. I am only one commissioner.
I'm only one as well, but I would not want to compromise with either of those crosswalks.
No,
because
neither.
That
No,
is,
that area.
No, I agree with that. I mean, as far as having none, but let's talk to what we feel is most important to protect. So I'm in agreement with you.
Commissioners, since there's been further discussion, do any of you have a comment or question?
This is Commissioner Benoit. I'm just wanted to clarify, my opinion is like, no, we can't do anything there. My opinion is that I feel like it would be a good idea, as I mentioned before, to just call the State Historic Preservation Office and kind of give them the rundown of what we're talking about and see what kind of guidance they might give us. Because for all I know, they might say, hey, that's no problem. You could put walkable murals as long as, there are certain colors or have some kind of historical theme everywhere. I have no idea, but I just feel like we should try to get a little guidance about this before we just make decisions to either do nothing or to, go forward and do crosswalk or walkable murals all over. So
there's only one other city in the state that has walkable murals.
And that is? Juneau, okay. Thank you, Commissioner Benoit. I think...
This is Commissioner Chris, I didn't catch that. So has Juneau already dealt with this issue?
Yes, they have.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it's located in a historic district. I just know that they have one. It is a rainbow crosswalk. And I know that...
The question is, what did they do in regard to their historic district?
I don't know if it's in a historic district. I just know that when this was brought forward...
What I mean is, did they develop rules?
They did not develop any rules. They did not develop an application. And that is why I mean, they have this contingency down there that, you know, it's sort of a fight constantly, and then they did it, and it's like, okay, we're happy with it, we'll just let it happen. And that was not the case here in Seward. We were directed to make this application and make a policy and a process for it, and that is why, you know, a lot of our stuff is that the information that I've used is other cities in the lower 48. And Ms. Benoit, I don't know where you were searching, but I have quite a bit of backup on different historic districts, and again, that's why I asked not to put them on there until I spoke to you guys. But, you know, it is happening. It's happening in a lot of cities, and it's just this gives you an opportunity as a commission to voice your concerns and give your input, and then know that, you know, we will be moving forward with what we were required to do by council.
Commissioner Kurtz here again. So what's the trend in those areas that do establish some sort of planning and zoning basis for walkable murals? Do you have an idea what the trend is?
The trend of walkable murals?
No, the trend of protection for historic districts or lack thereof.
Most of the, I mean, like,
I guess protection is probably a pejorative term. I guess you could say exemption.
I can tell you that in my research, most of the cities, I can't even think of one that didn't, have accepted them and not even put guidelines of, you know, restrictions. It's just, I mean, they've done these works of art all over their communities. Even in historic
What kind of history is
districts.
there on these walkable murals? Do we have enough to know how other communities are dealing with the maintenance side of things?
Yes, there's also a study that was done by Stanford University for how walkable murals, what type of paint, what type of things to use in not only Minnesota, but in Alaska. It was studied for 5 years.
Okay, awesome. I don't want to go, I'm sure this has already been all talked about in public before. I was just curious on that one point. Okay, Dave, thank you.
This is Commissioner Furlong.
Yes?
I guess this isn't really from a historical preservation point of view, but my mind on the whole subject goes to private parties or businesses perhaps wanting to buy, so to speak, a crosswalk and advertising. And so Seward is one of the very few historical towns in Alaska as far as the layout of the town is concerned. I think Skagway and Seward. My thought is just that kind of like billboards, I would not, I don't know how well that would fit if we had a bunch of advertisement all over the pavement.
Ms. Furlong?
There's no text allowed.
If you look at page 14, there are design guidelines that specifically state no logos, no text, no advertising, no octagons, triangles, or shapes that could be confused with traffic control. The painting must be between the lines and is not allowed per federal guidelines in certain aspects. And then it says the artwork must contain within the 2 transverse horizontal lines and or we're talking about putting back in the piano keys.
Thank you. And I do like the fact that this application was created and that there is a monetary amount attached to it so that there's a measure of seriousness assumed before anyone would take this under work.
I've even
Miss-
gone as far as with the application, you guys don't have it, but listing the costs of the different products that they should use. those standards, as Mr. Kurtz was asking about, there are certain types of paint, there are certain types of additives for non-slip and different things, and I broke that down to be able to help whatever applicant comes in, that we can give them this list of supplies that they should use, and you look at it, we've even stated that the Public Works Director will be, approving the transportation and the mobility of whatever type of paint that they use.
Thank you. So I'm pretty sure you guys have all considered gravel and snow plowing and salt and all that. Okay. Where are we at? So is planning and zoning still working on this?
I'm bringing forward, after tonight's meeting, I plan on bringing forward a resolution with the application in a complete form for approval at the November 3rd meeting.
Oh, okay, and we'll be there.
You will be there. You'll be there that
Work session.
Yep, the work session, but my goal is to have it all ready. I've even created sort of a packet that would be handed to the applicant, so that they have really good, clear guidelines and direction on how it works, and it will include the maps in the different areas. So after tonight's meeting, like I said, if you guys want to draft a letter or a memo to me, just letting me know, those areas are really sacred right now, and even if you guys want to say, this is the area that is really sacred to us right now, but we'd also like you to sort of omit Jefferson and Blaine for this time period, and just see how it works down in Port and Harbor areas. I will take anything that you guys give me and move it forward through planning and zoning.
Thank you for that, Ms. Wild. I really thank you for inviting us into the process and allowing us to give our feedback.
I really think it's important.
And thank you for your time. All right, with that, we are going to move on to Commissioner LeBrecq, but before Commissioner LeBrecq takes this up, we're going to be dealing with the CLG grant. Ms. Kingsland would like to talk with us. The laydown is from her. So on page 20, we're going to begin the CLG, and put your laydown there, and let's let Ms. Kingsland guide us through.
All right, can you hear me?
Can you speak a little closer to the phone?
Okay, and I took it off the speakerphone. Is this better?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Yeah, I have it's really hard for me to hear anything on this. So this is Valerie, and I'm really here just to answer any questions. And first of all, let me apologize. I'm so late that this laydown came this late. I just got the spreadsheet with all of the different, with the labor worksheets and all the different worksheets to document purchases and invoices today. So I'm still actually, while we're in this meeting, I'm working on updating this as well, and I'll send that out. So, so sorry that you're getting this late. I don't know, is everybody able to see their email that isn't theirs, who can follow along?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just want to be sure that nobody is missing out, because I don't want to, there's no sense in reading this to you. But I'm here to answer questions and just to encourage you to just be diligent about documenting your work, and so that we can provide the reports needed and work together. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it.
Thank you.
Commissioner LeBrecq may have other things that he wants to share.
Yes, he's going to actually have the next session on this. But we do, Ms. Kingsland, as a commission, we really do want to thank you for the part you played in this. We know that there were a lot of steps that had to be done behind the scenes, and they had to be done correctly. There are specific ways that this is handled, and really appreciate your professionalism and knowledge and getting this done for us.
Oh, well, that's really nice of you. I also plan to put together some packets. I'll put them in manila envelopes so you can store your paperwork and other things in them as well, like receipts. But to put some information packets for you so you have all the documentation before you in writing. Sometimes when you're working on a project, it's really helpful to have it in front of you. You can refer back to it, make notes, and then also print out the in-kind volunteer sheet to help you track it. So you can do it digitally with the Excel spreadsheet that I'm going to be sharing with everyone, but some people prefer to write it on paper.
That's great, thank you.
Jessica will send out an email when those packets are ready to pick up.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just let me know if you have any questions.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions? And keep in mind that Commissioner LeBrecq is going to give us a presentation on next steps.
So Commissioner Bedwell, I have one question. Just, being new in the commission, I'm not quite sure how these CLG grants work yet, but like you're wanting us to track hours. I'm just wondering, are we considered like volunteers? So we're tracking the volunteer forms, or are we separate?
You are absolutely volunteers, and I was really, Judith Bittner provided the independent sector's value of volunteer time for 2020, and it's adjusted for the state of Alaska, so it's even more. So it's $28.19. So I will print out a specific sheet for you to use that has like your start time, your end time, your total time, so you can calculate the number of hours, and I'll go through those spreadsheets as well too, and we'll help clean those up. So yeah, absolutely, your time is very valuable, and we want to record that work. So this particular grant project requires, part of our agreement was to provide at least 300 volunteer hours as our share of the grant. Was that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Does any other commissioner have a question for Ms. Kingsland? All right, with that, Commissioner LeBrecq is going to give us the next steps on our CLG grant.
Thank you, Chair
And
Cease.
could you speak up, Commissioner LeBrecq, and get close to your mic?
Absolutely. So, thank you for that. Chair Cease, I want to start by echoing your comments about Ms. Kingsland and saying thank you so much for helping us through this process. It's been a great partnership. I'm very appreciative of that. I also will publicly say, as I have before, that I committed to Ms. Kingsland that we would log our hours and we would keep our receipts, and that we would manage this project in a manner that will allow this to be not only a successful project, but not too much work on behalf of administration. We are very lucky, we are very fortunate to have administration willing to help us on this. It's going to alleviate some of that work for us. So I appreciate that very much. I'll make my advertorial for the hours, for volunteer hours, write absolutely everything down, because everything where we are discussing or spending any time or a minute on this legitimately that's trackable and appropriate is, as you said, $28 and some towards. We can exceed 300 hours as well too. Mm-hmm. All that defers the cost that will eventually be borne by the city and or any fundraising that we have to do. So appreciate that very much. For that, again, it's not just our hours, it's hours of any of the volunteers. So if you do something similar to Hoban Park and you happen to have 10 volunteers show up, we track their hours as well too. It is not just our own hours spent on the project. Please stop me at any point in time if you can't hear me or you want me to clarify. These are the things that I propose to do tonight. One is we're going to propose both a cadence and a calendar kind of as to how we're going to proceed. I am going to go through a little bit of an overview of the whole purposes grant, just distill it back down. I'm not going to read through it all. We're going to look at the timeline, which of course has changed because we just now got approval. That is COVID related. I did speak to Judith Bittner as well too. She did, of course, state, like you said, that the grant period had been extended. It originally was to end much earlier, as in September now, but it's been extended to June, as Ms. Kingsland has pointed out in this memo. Thank you for preparing that. So we're going to adjust our timeline a little bit. We're going to reestablish the commitment of project personnel who are in charges, and then we need to take the committees, which I have a copy of the committees that we decided on previously, and we need to flesh out those committees a little bit so that that work is evenly distributed. And then, like I said, talk about next steps, next dates to meet with this as well too. So those are just some of the real basic things to do tonight, but I really would like to start with just a real quick, or as quick as can be, overview of why we're doing this and some key steps as I went through the document. It's been a while since we've looked at it. Is that okay with everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So the primary purpose of our project, of course, is to increase awareness of Seward's historic district sites and the significance. We did identify that as 50 years or older. We said we'd intend to do this by creating a walking tour. We have tentatively, yes.
Fred,
Yes.
it begins on page 20, and right now he's not reading off anything he actually has in here.
Yeah, I'm looking at three.
Yeah,
different
I'm
visuals.
purely
Okay.
going over the highlights
Yeah.
of the grant, so I'm not asking word for word, but we do all have copies of that in past meetings, so we can certainly circulate that. So I just want to say that we've identified 25 such sites, but one of the things we thought about since we started this is one of the first steps, and I'm going to write an actual action plan, but I wanted to get input from you guys tonight, and I will write an action plan over the next few days here from actionable items. But one of the first things we have to do is, it's great that we identify a site, but we've got to get okay from the people responsible for those sites, whether it's the city or whether it's the private individuals, that they're actually interested. We're not going to go to the work of doing the research, putting all the information down, developing a sign which somebody's ultimately going to say, I don't want that sign in my yard. So we need to make sure that we look through the sites which we already identified 25. At some point in a future session, not tonight, prioritize which ones we want to start with, and then start getting some approvals from those folks, whether it's a city entity or a private entity, to move forward with the research and or sign design. I also want to clarify that it is not the intent to come up with 25 places of wording and 25 signages prepared to all do it one time. We can come up with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 in the beginning, which you had mentioned before. We can have signs produced and we can have signs here, which I think will motivate us all. When we see 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 signs which are here, physically here, that we can take a look at, they're living, breathing kind of, well, they're not living, but they're actionable things that we can look at, and then we'll be prepared to put those in the ground when that time comes before next June 30. Okay, so we will be doing this in piecemeal fashion, also based on places that we know will agree to have those. One of the steps in the action steps is going to have to be, as we talked about forms earlier tonight, we are going to come up with some type of form which says, we'd like to put XYZ sign in your location, do you agree, and this is what's involved, and then somebody would actually say, yes, I agree, and yes, I sign off on that. Versus a verbal agreement where 6 months later we try to install something, somebody says, I don't know what you're talking about. So there's some procedures that we need to take to make sure that we do that. So again, the purpose is ultimately the walking tour. We know there's a cultural and economic benefit to all that for Seward, and we'll support that by a printed map at a later time. We again appreciate the support from the City of Seward personnel as well. Just want to say that these interpretive signs were really well received by the historical preservation, by the SHPO, because they, per the original application, address rehabilitation of historic properties, leveraging funds for resources, and or restoring and preserving defining elements of historic properties. And that's what we're going to be looking at. Is we're really going to be looking at things of restoring and defining elements of historic properties as well too. We'll be referencing the 2017 Historic Preservation Plan, which was actually mentioned in this application. So we want to stay consistent again with the things, historic overlay, 2017 plan, everything is all supposed to tie together towards a walking tour which will strengthen our local preservation efforts. Project personnel. We originally had proposed that I would be the primary project personnel, which I'm still, of course, willing to do. And secondary on that also, at one point, Mr. Kurtz, you had been put on there as well, too. Is that something that you are still wishing to do as well? Sorry to put you on the spot. We have to re-put everybody here on personnel and make sure we're all in agreement.
What's the outlook as far as actual time that needs to be put in the immediate future?
We've got between.
So what we're looking at for activity right now.
We've got between now and June. We're going to have 4 committees. So we'll have grants and in-kind donations committees. We'll have marketing communications, with which let me go through this. So grants and in-kind donations will be Chair Cease and myself. We have marketing and communications, which at this point is Commissioner Benoit. That would be probably a great place where you could help us. Marketing, communications, radio, that type of thing, Facebook expertise, and so on. We have volunteer recruitment and engagement, and historic preservation planning and advocacy. These are the 4 committees. In answer to your question, I envision a situation where we really need to do work between meetings. So we're not going to do just work sessions at meetings to get this done. We just don't have the time. So I think that we need to have, at a minimum, a meeting, I think, probably every 2 weeks, probably an hour to 2 hour session, probably a couple hour session every 2 weeks or so, just to spend some time on this planning. But again, this can be done in a committee way, so we don't need to necessarily all get together to spend 2 hours together, but we're going to need to find some ways to have some meetings in between meetings. So committee meetings of those 4 committees. So I would anticipate that there'd be probably, I'm guessing, at least 4 hours per month that would be spent between our usual monthly meetings to prepare for and report back. So that would be my best guess, would be probably 4 hours in between meetings in addition to the reports on these meetings. I also anticipate that we probably, Chair Cease, are going to end up back into work sessions before our meetings. So, that's a total of 4 hours plus the additional probably work session of probably an hour, hour and a half, or whatever it is before these meetings.
This is Commissioner Furlong. I'd like to cut right to the chase, and how can we get, let's say, just 5 locations, and Marianne and Commissioner Benoit and myself are on this planning and advocacy committee, and so maybe we could get together and contact the owners of those 5 locations and get some permission with this paperwork that you're talking about, so that we can get started with this and start creating actual drafts of what we want on the signage, so we can send this to whoever we contract with.
I can answer that. Thank you very much. And so this last week represented our first opportunity to actually start moving forward once we got the signed, executed contract. So that's where we're going today. I appreciate you mentioning that. Thank you. Historic Preservation Planning and Advocacy, Commissioner Furlong, thank you very much. So the next step will be that tomorrow, actually, I'll be contacting Corvus Designs, which is the company that we've worked with, or that I've worked with previously, that does the actual design, very similar to the design that I have done, which was a KMTA design. So KMTA contracts them, the Kenai Mountain Turning and Arm Corridor contracts them to do their signage so that they look consistent, and making sure that they're still available to do that. If not, we'll have to go to a different vendor. So what they do is they then provide us with an actual template, and then that template will tell us how many words we have and how many pictures we can put in, etc. So that should not preclude you, however, from contacting those folks which we've identified, which those are in this list. We can recirculate that, and there's no reason to not start contacting those folks now. And then I will get the process going on how many words, how many pictures, that kind of thing. So we can start that right away.
So it's Commissioner Kurtz again. So we're looking at what, 4 hours a week, basically?
No, 4 hours, I would think a minimum of 4 hours over the course between meetings. I don't think it's per week.
Okay,
Of
so, yeah.
structured time.
Yeah, so I get there. Right.
Of structured time together, there'd be some additional volunteer work and research done individually with committees.
Right.
But there would be additional work sessions that are going to be on top of the meetings that we currently have.
Right. Yeah, so I'm down for that particular function.
Thank you very much. All right, and then,
Keep me in that column.
Okay, so which column is that?
he's a secondary project personnel manager, so per the original application.
And I'll also be able to do some, work with whoever's going to be doing the promotional stuff.
Thank you.
Marketing and
And,
communications? Is that right?
Especially the graphics, the writing aspect of it, or brainstorming for, whatever. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Kurtz.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Before I get much further into this, I'd like to bring up the committees again and tell you, so now we have grants and in-kind donations.
Excuse me. Somebody needs to put their phone on mute, please. Thank you.
We have grants and in-kind donations, and I'm going to read these slowly, and anyone who'd like to speak up, that'd like to join any of these committees would be great. But grants and in-kind donations is currently Chair Cease and myself. There's a marketing and communications, which is Commissioner Benoit, and now Commissioner Kurtz has gracefully offered to participate in that area. We have historic preservation, planning, and advocacy, which is Commissioner Furlong and Commissioner Benoit. And we do have volunteer recruitment and engagement, which I currently have Commissioner Benoit, but I'd like, first of all, I need a second person, and I'd also like to get some additional help there, because you see Commissioner Benoit's name mentioned here an
Three
awful
times,
lot.
yes.
In addition to the fact that she's also working deeply on
Facebook.
historic overlay and Facebook. So
I would like to be put into the volunteer recruitment and engagement. Commissioner Wolkers,
Yes,
which of these would you like to be a part of?
I was just studying this, I think, probably volunteer engagement, although I'd like to work on the overlay for this, or the planning too.
Okay, you can be in more than
that's
one.
great.
That's wonderful, thank you. So you're going to be in historic preservation planning and advocacy, and in volunteer recruitment and engagement.
Yeah, and you're on
Okay.
that one, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well appreciated. Thank you very much. Anyone else? I don't want to leave anyone out of anything. All right, thank you.
Let me ask. Commissioner Benoit, are you okay with the fact that you are on 3 of these committees?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I could, basically, I guess I could just do a minimal involvement with the volunteer recruitment and engagement. I mean, for example, if there's something that Rotary can do to help, I'm happy to step in and see if I can, get them as volunteers, but maybe, Cheryl and Fred could basically take that on otherwise.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Sounds good. Commissioner LeBrecq?
Thank you, Deputy Clerk Stella. Might I ask you to add the committees, just the title of those 4 committees and/or those responsible onto our monthly agendas? It'll make it much easier to report out in an appropriate manner
And
to prepare
track.
for and to track.
I don't understand what you're asking.
At the beginning, so whereas there's a place somewhere for reports where it'll say like it'll say certified local government grants and so on, if we could have reports by each committee, as opposed to me as being the only person that might be doing the reporting, I think we're going to be in a committee reporting format moving forward.
So as mentioned at the last meeting, those are standing reports, and there should be a written report included in the packet for those if there's something to report on. And if not, then there's no use for having one there. And if it's gonna be more of a discussion, then it needs to be added as a new business item rather than a standing report.
Okay, so what you're wanting then is for us to submit each month a form with our committees and the progress.
Yes.
All right, so that's on us, Commissioner LeBrecq.
Thank you for the clarification. All right, so appreciate that. The third part of the project personnel at one point was Iris Darling, who was going to help us with we had mentioned that she had experience working both with National Register property as well as renovation project, etc. So she'd be providing some expertise. I have not spoken to Commissioner Darling with the exception I do know that she'll be out of town, and I don't know whether she'll be calling in or not and wishes to be associated with said project. So I will touch bases with her and see if she's able to. I know she's here, she'd be willing to assist, but I will touch bases with her as well too. So we'll go through there. I want to point out there was a great idea brought forth by Commissioner Benoit. We spoke where she was saying that she thought that one of the first steps we might take, and I'll include that in our plan, was to actually take a walking tour of our own, if you will.
Great
idea. One
idea.
of our first meetings where we can actually take pictures and or identify, like, oh, there are all of the places that we identified, and or add some, which we had the flexibility to do that at some point as well too. So I'll put that on and put that forth for us to discuss. And then I would say that it's
Commissioner
Yes, sir.
Wilkers.
Yeah, maybe we can dovetail that walking tour in with one of our special work sessions on this. And
Agreed.
weather permitting.
That's a great idea. Thank you, Commissioner Wilkers.
Agreed with that. And that might be an appropriate time to take a look at the calendar then and at least just initiate a first next steps meeting. And then I can work on getting the kind of action steps together after this meeting for overall. But I think we should plan some time for this very first initial meeting to do an actual walk around while the weather is permitting.
Well, I propose next Thursday.
Works for me.
Commissioners? Commissioner Furlong.
I don't really understand what you're proposing.
A work session to
look at the initial 25 sites that we have and just to do a walking tour together for those who might be willing to identify and make sure that we're still on track with that, and to get input from all commissioners so that we're all moving forward in the same way. That does not preclude you from making any contacts in the meantime. You would simply be able to provide expertise to say, I've already spoken to that property, they're definitely interested, or et cetera, et cetera. It does not preclude you from doing anything, but it just takes us to where we walk through in some way that makes sense and identify and or take pictures of said properties.
So we're going to do, we're doing a walking tour.
Can I move to that we have a Preservation Commission walking tour Thursday at 5 p.m.?
Too dark.
Too dark?
Getting pretty dark.
Okay.
If we start at 5, and the time we get done,
Well,
it's gonna be-
okay,
maybe move it up a little.
okay, will you, yeah. Okay, so Commissioner Benoit and Commissioner Kurtz, can you do it earlier?
Like 4.
Like 4?
This is Commissioner Benoit. I'm open pretty much Thursday afternoon, anytime like after 1:30.
Okay. Commissioner Kurtz?
Yeah, I'm on a pretty short leash as far as outside of 9 to 5:30. So 5 o'clock would work, but because I could duck out early. But yeah, I've already missed because of a quarantine situation. Already missed some work, so.
Yeah,
I'm sure they'll be anxious to have me as much as possible next week.
yeah, that, Commissioner Kurtz, it's okay. You just, protect your work. We understand. If I can get a commitment from Commissioner Walkers, myself, Lebrec, Benoit, we are good. So, the next question is what time? 3?
4 would be better.
4? Okay, how about 4 o'clock?
Better for me, 4.
Okay, 4 o'clock next Thursday. So where would you like to meet to begin this walking tour?
Right here. City Hall.
All right, right here, City Hall.
And is this gonna be also a work session that's advertised as a work session?
Yes, it has to be.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it has to be.
That gives us a site for the public to know where we're starting.
Yes.
And will public, anybody else off the commission that wants to, can they go with us on this tour?
Yeah?
Sure,
So it's open to the public, just
Absolutely.
like
Oh,
a
yeah,
meeting
yeah.
would be? Okay.
Yes, yes.
absolutely. Thank you. I want to clarify also that not every commissioner has to be every single solitary meeting towards this. We just all have to work together and then make sure that our committees are moving forward and we're continuing forward progress. I'm going to skip real quickly in the interest of time.
If, 1 second, sorry.
Yes.
So Ms. Furlong made a motion to schedule a walking tour on October 15th at 4 p.m. starting at City Hall. I did not hear a second.
Second.
Okay. And we need to vote on this.
Okay.
Schedule a walking tour on October 15th, 2020 at 4 p.m. starting at City Hall. Walkers,
Yes.
Benoit,
Yes.
Furlong,
Yes.
Lebrec,
Yes.
Kurtz,
Yes.
Chair Cease.
Yes.
This has been approved, and for verification for the title, is it a walking tour of what
The
exactly?
survey of proposed signage sites
But it's
for the
historic.
TLT grant.
Okay, but it's the historic walking tour.
Historic walking tour, yes. Signage project.
Survey
Survey.
for the historic walking tour.
Walking survey, yeah, exactly.
Walking survey, okay.
So I'll just title it Historic Walking Tour.
Is this the
Okay.
25 sites we've already got, right?
That would be
Yes,
correct.
but
Okay.
however, as Commissioner Lebrec said, we don't have to use all of them. We can just, get it going.
All right, and then the last piece that I'll say, so I can allow definitely for some time for discussion, and then of course, citizen comments or anything else, I don't want to take the whole meeting, was just to restate, if we were to look at the actual grant, we originally had envisioned that we would start as early as March, which we obviously have not due to the pandemic, and due to the fact that we did not get a signed document back until just a week or so ago, so we're now able to start working. We're just going to move our timeline a little bit. So October 2020, we're working on contacting property owners, which we're just talking about. We will start conducting research over the course of this month. Again, we'll talk later about timeline. Contracts will be signed for signage at some point. Again, we all agreed as to who I'd contact that would make those signs. I'm going to contact them again and make sure that our quotes are good and not move forward until I have quotes that we, of course, all agree on and are approved. And at some point in time, there'll be some communication. Will need to be done some type of a press release to state something to the effect that we are moving forward with this project. Then we'll start from October to December. We'll be working on template design and research, probably beyond that. And then moving on through March of 21, we would try to have all signage done, maps into production, signs ordered, etc., with installation to start hopefully by April as soon as the weather allows. So I will revise as part of the action plan, if you will, what the timeline looks like, because we obviously can't stick with the original timeline given the fact we were just okay for this. So that's the highlights of what I have. I think we accomplished exactly what we want to, which was a general overview, filling out the committees, coming up with a first time to meet. I will say the one thing has come to mind. To Commissioner Walker's original, I think, intent of his request, is this also going to be a working session? So I would say that the walking tour might end, if it could, with coming back here to have a short discussion instead of standing in the street.
I agree.
So if we go from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock or something, and then go maybe 6 to 7 here or something, just to kind of come up with next steps, is that a possibility, or would we need to schedule that for a further time?
I think that would need to be scheduled for a further time.
Or are we allowed to meet off-site because we're noticing it? So, or in other words, could we meet somewhere else, whether it be in a local restaurant or at Cable House or wherever, if we're allowing the public to come as well?
I have a question.
Totally just threw me off.
Commissioner Walkers?
Yes, it's probably for the clerk, but do we need a quorum for this?
Yes. Yes.
Walk tour? Okay, thank you.
My question...
This is Commissioner Furlong.
Yes?
I don't know, we probably wouldn't have, it depends on the weather, really. We wouldn't have probably more than a couple people I wouldn't expect join us, but for just the question of how many people will be in our group, even though it's cold, we might just want to meet back at the pavilion so we have a roof over us to have a discussion.
I would think that would be okay.
That would work for me.
True. If it's cold, it's still. All right. All right. That sounds good. Thank you for that suggestion. I like the Cable House.
Does Commissioner Benoit just have a comment, if it's okay?
Yes.
I was thinking that because it sounds like our goal is to pretty quickly come up with a list of property owners that are willing to have a sign or be part of this tour, I feel like there's a few things we need to decide on before we start contacting people. And one is, say a person doesn't want a big sign in their front yard, but maybe they'd be okay with a small sign, or maybe they'd be okay being on the tour, but they don't want to have a sign at all. So I guess what I'm saying is there only one option? If you want to be on the tour, you must have a big sign in your front yard. And so that's the question we're going to be asking people, like, do you want to be in the tour, and this is what it would look like. You would have a sign that looks like this size, etc. Or is there going to be other options, like, yes, you could be on the tour, and you could just have your history of your house, on a website or on a paper walking tour map. Or can we have other sign types, like there's buildings downtown, for example, that are historic buildings that don't have a yard, that can't put a big sign out, but they might be able to do like a small plaque.
Yeah.
Something like that, that just says the name of the building, the address, when it was built, something like that.
Yeah.
So I guess I just feel like there's a few things we should iron out before we start contacting people, because if we're more expensive, I guess, in what we can offer, what the choices are, we might get more people.
Okay, so my comment to this would be, let's begin with the physical signs with where we're at. In the process of knocking on doors and finding out if, historic property owners would like to be on this tour, if they don't want, big signs, then in that case, Marianne, they would be further down the line when we actually develop the website you're talking about, where they can go by and just scan and then it comes up. So that's not covered under the CLG. What is covered are the signs, and absolutely we can do plaques. In fact, we may be able to do just the same sign and screw it into the business. We'll just, see. But Commissioner LeBrecq?
First of all, I apologize for not bringing that up earlier, because Commissioner DeBrant did bring up that very good idea, very good consideration a couple of times previously. I think what we might be referring to is there are some businesses, I know for example, I think that the Van Gilder was very public about the fact on a previous walking tour that they did not want to be included just for their own privacy, just
Yep.
didn't necessarily want people knocking on the door
Right,
and coming
right.
in. And I think that that's acceptable, and so there'll be a question, maybe there is a different form or a different request that says we have a printed map and we're gonna have you on it, but we respect your decision to not want an actual sign on your property so that it doesn't encourage the public to walk in your front doors. So I think that what you're suggesting, if I'm understanding correctly, is some type of flexibility into saying we're putting again, the purpose is to have a walking tour that the public can go from one area of the historic district to around the different historic district and identify historic buildings. Some will have plaques or signs. Some may have something different. Some may be identified on that map of just saying here's the history of it. And they could even say something to the effect of please respect and not, which I think we're going to have to do something with the signage to say please respect if this is a private residence or a business or whatever it might be and not to walk right into it kind of thing. So I think if I'm understanding you correctly, you just want to plan for contingencies as opposed to having a one size fits all.
Yes, and I guess what I'm suggesting is we figure out what is acceptable as far as the scope of work for this, and then kind of know what those options are so that we have questions that we can ask people when we're talking to them, like, oh, if you don't want a sign, would you be interested, would you be okay with being on the paper map or just having a plaque or something like that. So we go to a person one time to talk to them and ask all the questions and get all the info rather than starting off going, hey, do you want a sign at your place? And if they say no, then later on going back and saying, well, what do you think about this? So I just wanted to be efficient and think of all the options. So you ask everything at once when we're talking to them.
This is Commissioner Furlong. I feel like we will be able to have more discussion on Thursday after we take the tour on this subject, but I feel like Commissioner Van Law maybe is a little concerned that as we tour, we may encounter owners, and since we don't have a firm plan as far as all of our options go, maybe if that happens, we can just assure these owners that we will put the options out there in public when we get a little bit, when we have a more consolidated written idea of what those options are, and just to make sure that they know that there will be some options and they will be included as far as planning is concerned.
Commissioner Wilkers.
Yeah, if we run into any owners in residence, we probably would be smart to ask them what they think about marking and signs and stuff. And then I'm on the planning committee. Would that fall under the planning committee of coming up with various options for marking and signs and stuff? Or not?
I think so, and I will tell you that we'll start with the premise that if you look at the original packet and the application, and we can recirculate that, not only the sites that we proposed, but there's an actual example of an actual sign. We know exactly the size, we know exactly what the sign looks like, we know exactly the material, and we can bring that along with us. I can propose that and put it in the packet. So we'll say, here's a picture of what a sign looks like in the yard. This is how far the post would have to go down. There is no cost to you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is the exact sign, and here's an example of what a layout would look like. And what are your overall thoughts on this? And then to your point, then we could also say, the second part is, it's option A, B, or C. Can we at least include you on the map? And or would you be open to a smaller sign to be discussed at a later time? So I'm hearing you all. It's a very good discussion. We do have a starting premise for the sign of exactly what it looks like, the sign, the material, and everything else.
I would like some clarification. I'm under the impression that this walking tour is for us to do a walking tour to see what a prospective visitor would see, not interviewing property owners.
I think it's a combination of said things because we have identified when we brainstormed here the 25 sites, so we can look at it and say, here's the site we identified. Does anyone have any thoughts about it? And you go, Oh, yeah, actually that's great, and we can also prioritize which ones we think might make the most sense to start off with. So I
Well,
think it's a
true.
prioritization, it's a recertification that we were on track with what we said originally.
That's fine. That's
Yeah.
all well and good.
Yeah.
My clarification I'm seeking is, are we actually going to knock on doors, or are we just going to
No.
do the tour, come back here and discuss?
I am not anticipating that we would be knocking on doors, but as Commissioner Wilkers pointed out and others pointed out, we could run into a property owner standing in the front yard saying, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
Because there'll be a group of us, even
Yes,
if there's
yes,
only 4 of us.
yes.
And we would say, "Well, look, we have an example. This is what a sign would look like." And as you might know, or as you might have heard, there's this really cool project which has been approved that we're working on. We're hoping that you'll be involved.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I just,
We won't be proactively knocking on doors. However, we may run into property owners. That was a very good point. I'd be
Yeah,
wanting to know
I mean,
why
if a
4
group
people
of
are
people
saying that.
comes in front of your house, you might walk out and ask what's happening.
Commissioner Furlong?
Yes, I just want to say to Commissioner Walkers, I really appreciate his suggestion. It is always proper and good to ask, especially an owner, what are your thoughts? And what an opportunity for us to collect the owner's thoughts. So wonderful suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you for yours as well. Commissioner LeBrecq?
I have nothing further. I think we're making progress.
Commissioners, do you have any comments or questions? All right, we're going to move on to our last item. And that is the letter on the status of the Kenai Mountains Tourniquet Arm National Heritage Grant. To make it short, we did not get this grant. We were denied. But we might get the next one. Okay, so everybody, make sure you mark your time for next Thursday walking tour. 4 o'clock, 15th. Okay, so, okay. No, wait. Okay. Now, do we have any citizen comments, Madam Clerk?
We do not.
Are there any commission or administration comments?
This is Commissioner Kevin. I just wanted to check on something. What date did we have, like, our work session with planning and zoning?
November
Is
3rd.
that the 12th?
Tuesday, November 3rd. 6 o'clock.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Furlong?
Yes, I just want to thank Ms. Will, is that how I say your name?
Wild?
For her help.
Thank you. Commissioner Kurtz? Commissioner Wilkers?
no comment.
Oh, okay, thank you. Commissioner Wilkers?
No comment.
Commissioner LeBrecq?
Nothing further. Thank you. Just appreciate everyone's assistance.
Thank you, commissioners. Another wonderful meeting, a lot accomplished. I would like to let you know that Vice Chair Ward is hoping to be at our next meeting. Naturally, on behalf of all of us, I encourage her to take all the time she needs. Thank you, Madam Clerk, once again for guiding us through. And I too want to thank Ms. Kingsland and Ms. Wild. And with that, we will adjourn.
So adjourned at 7:48.